The Alien universe is probably one of the weirdest lore-heavy universes I've ever really gotten into. Usually, when you get into something like Marvel or DC or let me think about this, like Assassin's Creed, Halo, so many. You could just name X company or X, idea. They will follow it to the T, right? They want to appease their customers. And whenever they go away from appeasing their customers, it causes a huge uproar. People are very unhappy. Like the Halo series, people didn't like that much. Newer Halo games, people didn't like that much because as the developers change, things change, different people come in, and it gets confusing, right? Alien has existed since 1979. The first movie came out in 1979, and it has been 45 years since that. 45 years. That's an insanely long time. That's almost half a century. Alien almost came out. Half a century ago. Now, because of that, there's been a lot of lore, a lot of people writing things in. Now, luckily for me, most of that stuff is within an area that I haven't gotten into yet. I don't really like it that much either. I'm not interested in it yet. Yet is the important part because in today's episode, I am going to talk about this book, Alien Covenant Origins. It's the book before Alien Covenant. If you have not read this book, I implore you to read this book. If you like Alien, read this book. If you liked Prometheus and Covenant, read this book. If you didn't like those movies and you think they're shit, maybe read it because maybe it'll make you a little more understanding of some stuff. Now, it doesn't explain things that are actually alien related, really. Um, Weirdly enough, it really gives you a amazing understanding of the world that humans live in at that time before Covenant is launched. Before then, there was never a colony ship. They had never populated new worlds. So the Covenant mission was insanely important. It builds so much lore in my mind of what it is to be human because there's the huge difference between Walter and David, right? And in this book, the neurologist that made David also working on Walter. But when they work on Walter, there isn't as much of a deadline. There kind of is, but Hideo-Yutani, when he buys Weyland Corporation to create Wayland-Yutani, he does so. Sorry, my cat is bothering me because she's petting me. But he wants to make sure that everything is up to snuff. He is not like Weyland and is not. Weyland pushed David, the David project. He pushed to have that project launched like for Prometheus. And he was extremely arrogant in the facts. I think that a lot of alien movies and literature, I don't know yet. I've only read this book. I should stop myself here and now and say I've only read this alien book. I intend to read all of them, but I started with chronological order because I believe normally when I get into things, I start with chronological order. I just enjoy it a lot that way. It gives you a really good understanding of the world that you're in because you really truly understand how you got there, right? Now, in this book, Hideo-Yutani is I want to say altruistic businessman. Hideo-Yutani in this book is someone who would not invest in the xenobiology testing that Weyland-Yutani is accused of in the future. To give us some sort of context, Alien Covenant happens 20 years before Alien. I'm pretty sure I got that right. Let me look this all up just in case, but I'm pretty sure I remember all this right. 2103 and Alien happens in 2122. So 19 years. There's 19 years between Covenant, or this book, and the first Alien movie. So the idea here was I read the whole book, and then I went, I want to go back and write down characters of note that were obviously important, that just so if they show up in later information, I know where they're from. And I think that's really interesting. I like stuff like that. I like it when creators pull back and call out lore or call out a person from some previous thing, right? Because this is only 20 years. Between Alien and Covenant, that's 20 years. That's not that long in the grand scheme of things. So let's see to give more examples of like how long. Aliens is in 2179, which is way past 2179. So 76 years after this book, Aliens comes out, right? Aliens happens. Anyway, let's start with what's just in this book, right? This is a book club about this book, but it's important to know that we're all on the same page. I've seen all the other movies, and I'm starting to get convinced that there's a lot of retconning, obviously. Like in the first Alien movie, they have the engineer in the chair, right? But he looks like a huge skeleton giant, and kind of not really even that, because it's kind of looks like just a massive statue almost, but it has a little spot where a chest burster came out of him type of thing, right? In Prometheus, it's not like that. The alien is in like cryo sleep, and the one that was driving did they find a dead one in the driver's seat? I'm not sure if they did in Prometheus. I don't think so. I think they only found the alive one. They found the dead one at the entrance to the weapons cargo bay, where David opens one up and like takes some samples, and it like drips down and mixes with some worms, and the worms mutate, and anyway. Now, why is that important? It's important because in the first Alien movie, Weyland-Yutani literally wants that xenomorph, and crew is expendable. In the movie, it straight up says crew expendable. Hideo Yutani would not be that type of guy. If after reading this book, he's not the type of guy that would murder an entire crew just to get some xenotech. He believes in human values. He believes in protecting humans. He also wants to make money, but he's already the top. Weyland-Yutani is the largest corporation on Earth and beyond at this point. Their only competition is really Juto, which they describe in this book that this is like a detective novel. I should start by saying this entire book is just like a detective novel, but is sci-fi. There's a lot of unraveling of things. As you can see, I've written quite a lot of sticky notes. I've shoved them all at the start so it doesn't look like too much, but I'll go through those in a second. There's a lot of things where, all right, I can't be vague. You already seen the book. So one of the first things that intrigues you is throughout it all, the prophet slept and screamed, while around him a select gathering of acolytes shared his visions and shuddered, shared, and grew ever more resolute in the knowledge of what it was they must do. The vision the prophet was unleashing among them could not be allowed to come to earth. So Fields is this man who is getting nightmares of the xenomorph outbreaks. the murders of the xenomorphs. He is getting dreams of them, and they're really bad dreams. He can see, smell, and hear those dreams. He has senses that are so real he can pick them out, but he can't perfectly pick them out in a way enough to convince other people that what he is experiencing is real. The only people who think that what he's experiencing is real is the people who have seen him have nightmares, seen his spasms, heard his little whispers. The only thing that keeps him alive is the cause that he will help save humanity one day by stopping the Covenant Project. The Earth Savers is what they call themselves. Duncan Fields is such an interesting character to me because he is a leader, but he's not because he does not lead. He is a prophet because he doesn't lead people, but people look at him and use him in almost a religious sense. He doesn't want to give his opinion and influence people. He just literally has nightmares. And they will try to figure out what he is, experiencing. The Earth Savers. Now, that is his organization. I say his, but it's not really his, like I just said. There's a council of 6 people, or is it 8? Hold on. I even got all their names. I did all the research, boys. I've reread this book so many fucking times, you got no fucking idea. Alrighty. No, there's 8 board members. There's 6 people in the Earth Savers Council. That's why it's 6 and 8. I got mixed up there. You have to read... You have to really read between the lines to get all 6 characters from the Earth Savers. It took me a lot of unwinding to get to it. Let's see here. It took absolutely terrible. I rewrote this 2 or 3 times. There's 6 members on the Earth Savers Council, okay? There's the matron, which is Millicent. She's the eldest woman. There's Yukiko, which is a younger Japanese woman who Millicent and the matron, they kind of go back and forth. Yukiko's also the one at the very end who was defending the prophet, who was inside the mechanical horse. Super cool, by the way. 3, you have the Baron, obviously, Baron Ingleton, who is English. He's elegantly dressed. His real full name is Baron Josiah Lethbridge Ingleton. 4, you have Coma. Now, Coma is an interesting one. On page 271, it implies that he is South American, but on page 165, it implies he's African. Which I think the writer just... I don't know why I stood... Of course, there's going to be inconsistencies. I think the writer just got Africa, South Africa, and South Asia mixed up because it doesn't make much sense for it to be South America or South... I mean, it makes more sense that he's Africa to me than South America for some reason. But maybe. I don't know. Coma sounds like an African name to me. Anyway, Baron Ingleton kills him. That's the one guy that he kills. On page 271, that's the person he kills, is Coma. He kills Coma. Because Pierre is still there. Pierre is casually dressed. He's a technical proficiency. They describe him as a squirrel eater. He's like chewing on a little cookie. Like, that's how they describe him. And he's French. Pierre, right? And last but not least, number 6 is Pavel. Pavel is someone that they mention many times in the book as the overweight council member. He's Russian. He's the head of a Russian pharmaceutical company. which is kind of crazy. And it describes that he's blonde on page 295, which is interesting, right? So those are the 6 people. Now that we have that covered, Coma's dead. They have to find a new person to replace Coma if they want to, right? The idea of the 6 was supposed to, like, I don't even, there doesn't even have to be 6, right? I think that that's the thing about this, is that it's such a new cult, I would call it, that they're kind of making stuff up as they go, stuff that makes sense. Although Baron Ingleton does say that we need a new South American delegate after he kills Coma, it's kind of like, I think that that's just to, like, kind of F you to Coma, right? Like, huh, I guess we'll need another one. Like, fucking asshole. Like, that would, I don't know, that was kind of weird, but what I'm getting at here, though, is all 5 of the other ones are still alive. All 5. The Matron, Yukiko, Baron Ingleton, Pierre, and Pavel are all still alive. Now, some of these I don't think are that important. Pavel I don't think is that important. Pierre I don't think was that important. But between the Matron, Yukiko, and Baron Ingleton, it was those are very important characters. They fleshed them out very well. They gave them a lot of lines. They described their character more thoroughly, which makes me want to see more of them. I want to see more of what happens. I want to see their reaction to failing to destroy the Covenant. Their last-ditch effort was to basically crash a shuttle into the Covenant last minute. The shuttle would just go at the fastest speed it could and hit it like a bullet, and hopefully that would stop it. That was their last-ditch effort. They tried to go more peaceful ways without killing people. That didn't work, and so they got more and more desperate. They got more and more, murdery, because in real life, the same way, when you have no alternative or no seeming alternative to make change, people start to create violence. That's why there's a very small difference between an activist and a terrorist. They're very, very fine lines. It basically just depends on what you believe in, right? Because if you don't believe in it, you think the person's a terrorist. If you do believe in it, you think they're an activist. So it really plays off of that psychological thought process, right? Now, Duncan's also alive. They take Duncan. I really, really want to see the security officers or police officers' reaction to seeing Duncan have these nightmares in his cell. Like, they're going to detain him, put him in jail probably for the rest of his life, but he's going to still have these nightmares no matter what you do to him, unless you kill him, Now, that gets kind of the Earthsavers out of the way. The Earthsavers are a very interesting part of the book, because there's nothing really in Alien that's ever like that. Duncan Fields is almost like a psychic, but it's only dream psychics. It's only things that they dream. It's kind of like the woman from Jeepers Creepers, who she's like, oh, I'm a psychic, but I only see what I dream, type of thing. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of worthless. Like, she's not quite aware if what is going on is real. But Duncan Fields is convinced that what is going on is real. And he is convincing, he's not even really trying to convince other people. I think that's why they wrote him in really, really well, is that he's almost like a self-depressed, hates his life person. He is in his, I think they describe him in 40s or 50s, slightly overweight man who had a normal 9 to 5, like, hardworking job, like a blue collar job, and one day he just suddenly started to get these nightmares, just randomly, and they're so overbearing. So was that because the first time he got it was Prometheus? Like when the crew of Prometheus dies. And now during this book, it's when David is dropping the nukes on the engineers. Not nukes, but you get what I mean. So that's what I'm trying to picked together at least. That's a huge plot point of this book that I think is very interesting, and that they can do a hell of a lot with future books. You know, it plays a lot more into how does Earth change, right? Because we don't, at least I don't know yet. I'm not going to spoil it until I read these other books and stuff. I'm trying to like nitpick what is lore or not, because as I said earlier, some things have been retconned, like the Engineer and Alien versus Covenant. It's such an old property, you know, that they have to retcon some stuff to make it make sense, right? Now, in the same way, I think that they kind of need to stand back and go, okay, this doesn't make sense, throw it out the window, right? Some of those things are like the AI, like Ash. Ash from the first Alien movie is very, very similar to David. Extremely similar to David, which is kind of interesting. How did you go from creating Walter in 2103 to creating Ash by 2122? How did you go back? Why did the neurologist go back a step? Walter was perfect, almost. The only problem with Walter is that he hesitates. That is the only issue. Is that an issue, or is that what makes him more human? You know? He doesn't kill David because he's holding the rock and David's like, are you going to do something? And he's reaching for the knife and he gets him because he hesitates. Other than that, he was very... I think that he had a much better grasp and understanding of what it meant to be human, not what it should be to be human, right? David is about survival of the fittest. He is about strength. It is the mindset that a lot of countries in the real world have, right? Where they believe they are the strongest, and the strongest come out on top. And if you are the strongest, then you can control everything. And that's just prey versus predator. That's just how the world works, right? So he wants to create the ultimate life form and be God, you know? Walter, on the other hand, wants to do what's right. Well, in his mind, everyone's trying to do what's right. Let's hold up. Walter wants to do his job. He wants to do what helps other people more. He's more selfless in that sense. It's very interesting, though. There's very small differences, right? Now, this is why I really, really want a continuation of Covenant. Really do. I really want a lot of shit had to happen between Covenant and Alien. So much. So much. It's only 19 years. What happened? Weyland-Yutani dies. I'm going to just say that right out in the get-go, right? He had to have died within the 20 years. In the book, it describes that he's an older guy. But that also would start to more explain how things got worse. How they started to get interested or be arrogant about the xenobiology, right? Is that it's all arrogance based. It's overconfidence that, oh, we'll figure this out. We'll be able to use these aliens, right? It's not us against them. It's that we will use them against our own, right? It's inner species genocide because we're trying to kill each other in order to come out on top. Which then David looks at and goes, I mean, I'm doing the same shit. Like, he's no different. So that's why it then makes it very interesting to think about David existing past Covenant, right? Where are all these aliens coming from in the later movies and books, right? They kind of just are there. A lot of times they're just there, or they explain it in a way that doesn't totally make sense. I think you could definitely write an entire series about David reaching Origai 6 and experimenting on people while also bringing Walter with him. It's implied that Walter's gone and dead, but why? Like, what's stopping David from just going back to the planet and picking up his dead, quote unquote, dead corpse, right? And I could imagine that David being a extremely intelligent, sentient AI being, right? He knows that Walter is superior to him, maybe not psychologically in his mind, but physically he is. He knows he's physically better. He looks almost exactly like him as well. So he would benefit from trying to either create his conscience into Walter's body or just using parts of Walter to improve himself, using the technology he can learn from Walter to improve himself, right? That would make sense why he would bring Walter with him. And I could also imagine him going even more mad as he basically turns Walter on like they do with Bishop in Alien 3, where he's just like hooked up and he's like, oh, and is replying to people and whatnot. Like, you could do the same with Walter. You could have Walter basically harassing David and like saying those one-liner quips that make David overthink and go crazy. Like a true autistic person in real life, right? You say one thing and they just start like mind tumbling into everything, right? Because they just think about all the possibilities of what you just said. That is David. Like, the best way to make David hesitate is to make him think. Like, Walter, I guess that is the same way. Like, Walter has to think about the moral implications of what he was doing. David does as well, but they were both convinced of what their moral standings are. If you can start to make them question it, it will drive them mad. It will make them hesitate, right? So that's my setup of an idea of they should make a continuation to Covenant. Wow, this episode's already gone past like half an hour, so I should probably wrap it up a little bit. They also describe the board members for Weyland-Yutani. Okay. So you have Hideo-Yutani, Jenny-Yutani. There is a female British woman that is older than Jenny, but they don't mention her ever again, and she doesn't actually say anything. She's just there. I mean, wait, she might say one thing, but they don't describe her any more than that she was older than Jenny. There's Takeshi, who was a shorter man who needed a booster. There's a smartly dressed Japanese man named Kasawi. Found that name on page 114, and his description was on page 83. That's how I connect them together. English male, big... Oh, Mr. Beckman was a big puss. He was in English, he was male. Then there's another Japanese man called Iroki Shiro, or Shiro Iroki. I don't know which one is his first name, which one is his last name, because they refer to him as Shiro-san and Iroki-san. But it's obvious it's the same person because of his drinking habits. They describe it as the same guy. It's the guy again. It's the same guy that's drinking a lot type of thing. And then there's a third Brit, Mr. Davies, Mark Davies. His first name's Mark. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of the 8. Wait, yeah, 4 out of the 8 that we have both first and last names. And we have 7 out of the 8 that we have at least one name. And the British woman, we'd have nothing on. You know, you could basically make up anything at that point. Now, each of these people are on the board of Weyland-Yutani, right? So if we can infer that 19 years later Alien happens and that they choose to do that, Hideo-Yutani is probably dead by now, by that time. He would have not approved something. Now, interestingly enough, Jenny Yutani also wouldn't have, I don't think. She's very much like her father, but she also has a way of thinking about things. Now, is that a positive in the sense that she might think about it and realize that xenobiology is the only way to truly stop competitors from trying to kill them or get rid of them somehow, you know? Like, who knows what happened to Hideo? Maybe that changes her. We don't know because it's none of it's existent, right? But it's very interesting to me. I think you can do a lot with this, you know? That Mark Davies, they also talk to a lot. He's basically the Wayland executive in Wayland-Yutani. You know, they have 3 Waylands and 4 Yutani executives, and he was he was the most vocal Wayland executive by far. Mr. Beckham, they didn't really do too much, and Takeshi also didn't really do too much. You can kind of go from there, right? What do you guys think? I'm really interested. So, this is all I've read so far, and I don't want to ruin it by jumping ahead. I want to slowly read things by chronological order and pick out things that I don't think make sense and throw them to the side and maybe write my own book if no one else does, because Romulus doesn't continue this story. They go back to their roots because they know those movies sell better. They know the movies sell better when they don't try to overcomplicate things and instead they just go, this is a horror movie, it's scary, you don't need to think about it too much, just go for it, right? And that's what sells. But in my mind, it's also because with Covenant and Prometheus, they didn't explain shit at all. They just showed you it, right? You had to figure out what the black goo is, you know? How did that happen? There's so many like very interesting, very interesting, I don't want to say inconsistencies because they're not inconsistent. Like for instance, the black goo. In Prometheus, okay, we're going to talk about LV-426. Okay, that's the planet that the engineers were on, that David wiped out. LV-426. Now I say that because in Prometheus, they take the ship and he flies it. No, wait. I mean, he has to fly it away because he kills all of the engineers in Covenant, right? And it has to be a separate planet because it was the moon of the engineers' planet. But in Covenant, they have the actual the ship. They have the ship in Covenant as well, but it's crash landed, right? In Prometheus, it crashes at the very end, but he obviously has to get lifted off if he wants to genocide against all the engineers, right? So that has to be LV-426. God. There's foliage in both Prometheus and in Covenant, but by the time the Alien happens, there is no foliage. There's no plants on LV-426 in Alien. There's no plants on LV-426 in Aliens. There's no plants. It's a barren wasteland. There's no foliage at all. But there was in the first 2 movies, before the Xeno weapon was completely unleashed by David. Now, David, while researching this, obviously we understand that this overtakes any biological animal-esque life form. It will take over, bugs, worms, anything that is seen as flesh and blood, right? But it doesn't affect plants. But it obviously does, to a degree that David did not realize yet. He doesn't even know that. He's completely unaware. Because if he was aware, then things would be very different, I think. He would have used that as That's just an insane thing that like they don't really use. That the Xeno weapon, by the time, let's see here, Prometheus, the difference, Prometheus was in 2093, while Covenant was in 2104. 04 to 93 is 9 years. No, wait. 12, 7, 6, 9. It's 11 years. So in 11 years, it goes from normal foliage to a very microscopic foliage that disperses the black goo as spores, which you see in Covenant. That's what infects, God, who was it? Because they describe all of the characters in this book as well, all of the security officers, every security officer. I believe it might be Hele gets infected by the same spore, but when they're in the alien ship, he's like, "Hey, look at this, Sarge," and he's like looking at like the spore and gets infected from it. But there's also Dickhead's wife, who's out with the other soldier. He like goes out for a smoke, and he gets it infected in his ear, and he goes, "That guy, that's a spore, right?" So the spore infected these people. And interestingly enough, I guess it wasn't as powerful of a dose to create an actual xenomorph. It kind of just turned them into abominations, right? But maybe that's also the plant DNA mixing with the human DNA and causing some inconceivable just death, right? It's horrible, but true. No, wait. No. They do have chest bursters. That's right. Yeah, they do have little Xenos that come out of them. They're the engineer Xenos. So when David committed genocide on all of the engineers, it was in such a concentrated amount that it almost liquefied the engineered DNA into the soil, which then was sucked up by the plants and injected itself back into the people. Insane. But David wasn't aware of that. At least from our knowledge. At least I would believe that, right? So that's it. That's kind of all I wanted to say. I am playing the new game, Alien Dark Descent, and in that, the main commander guy also kind of has connections to these Xenos, where he doesn't get nightmares, but when something really bad is about to happen, he can almost see it coming, and he starts going, "Ah, get out of there!" That type of thing, right? So he sees it real time. Which is why also it kind of continually proves my point of Duncan Fields also experiencing these in real time. Even if they are nightmares, maybe he's only experiencing them in nightmare form because he's sedated when he's sleeping. Compared to the other guy from Alien Dark Descent, they're on the same planet as the xenomorphs and shit, you know. Maybe he has a closer connection. I haven't finished it yet. He's got a daughter the project. It's a really interesting game. It's about like a cult that starts following, that is spreading the Xeno weapon against Weyland-Yutani because they don't like Weyland-Yutani so much, but they probably also have more personal reasons. I haven't gotten to the end yet, so I don't know what they are yet, but you can obviously tell that they are at least convincing other people to join their cult against Weyland-Yutani, but also because they've been on this rock for however long. You know, the commander grew up on the planet. It's rather crazy. It kind of infers that Duncan Fields, Alien Dark Descent, is 2198, by the way, in the Alien universe. 2198, which is Uh, 19 years after Alien 3. $21.98, which is also 94 years after Covenant. 94 years. Now, the guy looks in his 40s. He said he grew up on this thing. See, that's the thing, is that these years are very close together. Weirdly enough, with a lore-heavy thing like this, where you have cryo sleep, where you can literally slow down your metabolism enough where you can go light years into the future by just traveling like years at a time and stuff like that. It's crazy that there's not more time between this shit, right? It's kind of odd that it is actually like 20, 80 years. It feels like it was arbitrary, which you can just make this shit up. You know, it's sci-fi. You can just make it all up. Okay. I'll end this by saying it's going to be my birthday this weekend on Sunday, but I'm going to be home alone, so I'm going to probably redo my 24-hour live stream again, and this time I think I'm going to play Alien Dark Descent for it. I think that'd be a fun game to play. I'm going to try to get it on my PC. It's not turn-based. It's very, if you know XCOM, it's very similar to XCOM, but it's real-time. Instead of turn-based, it's real-time reactions. The aliens, like, you see them on the motion tracker going bleep, 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 and it gets higher pitched the closer they get to you and stuff. You see them on the mini-map and whatnot. It's kind of cool. It's very scary. It's very, like, you have to react very quickly. I'm playing it just on normal because I want to get used to it, but if I stream it like that, I might do it on the hardest difficulty and actually have, like, real reactions when my soldiers die because I've been playing with them for 2 hours and I'm like, no, you can't fucking die. That'll be fun. So if you're watching this Sunday, hey, check me out and I'll be doing that, and I can answer anyone else's questions and whatnot. If you see me at that time, ask them in chat, and I'm sure I'd love to talk about it because I love this stuff. I love the alien lore. I wrote down so many notes. I wrote down Dr. Bismillah was the doctor who tended to Duncan Fields. There was the ones who sacrificed themselves, OTBD. OTBD is Oh There Be Demons. Out There Be Demons, right? That's the Earthsaver saying is OTBD. Like, it's literally spelled OTBD. It's so funny. Chinese Jutao Combine. They do actually name the Jutao. How do you pronounce that? I'm terrible with Chinese. They name all three of their executives. Like, why isn't there more lore about them? If they're the main competitor to Weyland-Yutani, why does Weyland-Yutani have such a conglomeration, like, powerhouse? There has to be more, like, struggle. Why is it always Weyland-Yutani is almost like a godly character in these movies and shit, where they're like, they already have everything, but they're like still trying to get the Xeno stuff, but they don't ever describe why. We're just supposed to assume, oh, because they're a corporation. But it doesn't make sense. Because Hideo Otani would have never done this type of shit. You know what I mean? There's so much possibility. I'm excited. I really hope that they continue the stuff, you know? I'm going to probably watch and read the stuff after Alien Covenant because I haven't done any of that other than the movies. So at the live stream, I might have more knowledge. Hit me up. This is really interesting. I hope you enjoyed the book a lot too. If you read the book, tell me what your thoughts were. Are we on the same page? I would love anyone to give their opinions because I feel like I was going crazy, but also I felt like a genius after like doing all my sleuthing and getting everyone's names and stuff like that, right? So anyway, that's it. Bye-bye! Love you guys. Have a good night and a Merry Christmas. Santa, wave them out. Any minute. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful Christmas. I'm only on vacation at Josh's. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks, Santa. Bye-bye. Ah, that guy was great.